In an era when your background determined your destiny, one talented performer decided to rewrite her entire story. What she achieved was remarkable. What it cost her was everything. Dona Drake's journey reveals the complex realities talented performers faced during Hollywood's golden age. She worked under different names, including Rita, constantly reinventing herself in her quest for acceptance. Her carefully crafted background competed with the most elaborate studio creations of that time. Let's explore the extraordinary life of Dona Drake, a notable figure in Paramount's history. When Drake signed with Paramount in 1941, the studio prepared an official biography for press distribution. During Hollywood's golden age, emerging starlets received complete makeovers, biographical packages, publicity campaigns, and sometimes cosmetic enhancements. Studios invested substantial sums in these performers, shaping them into profitable brands. When they introduced Dona Drake, the studio presented a carefully prepared biography with origins, family background, and personal history. Like many studio biographies from that era, these stories were often fictional narratives designed to appeal to specific audiences or demographics. These performers frequently wrestled with identity conflicts because they lived manufactured personas created by studio executives. Drake's official biography claimed she was a Mexican native, born to Jose and Novella, successful restaurant entrepreneurs. The studio described her as having diverse heritage, Mexican, Irish, and French roots, combined in one appealing package. Studios developed these detailed backgrounds to maximize appeal across different markets. However, the reality was far more complicated. This meticulously crafted biography was completely fictional. Many performers with supposedly multiple heritages were actually African American actors and actresses who were passing, presenting themselves as other ethnicities to access better opportunities. Studios understood that claiming French heritage might help a performer gain acceptance in international markets. They went to remarkable lengths, teaching these stars languages and creating convincing personas that could withstand public examination. Research into other performers of that era shows similar patterns. Marilyn Monroe likely had Mexican heritage through her mother, who was born in Mexico, to white American parents temporarily living there, making her Mexican by birthplace, not ethnicity. Rita Hayworth, born Margarita Cancino, changed her appearance and name to minimize her Spanish heritage and appear more mainstream American. Both Marilyn Monroe and Ava Gardner maintained friendships with Dorothy Dandridge, though they had to exercise caution due to social attitudes of the era. Ava Gardner notably defied convention by openly celebrating her friendships with black actresses, particularly Lena Horne and Dorothy Dandridge, even posing for photographs together, despite potential career risks. Hollywood operated as an elaborate performance in itself. Nothing but facade, smoke, and mirrors, where nothing appeared as it seemed. This reality has continued since the industry's beginning. Everyone's origin story was manufactured by studios to fit specific marketable images. These performers weren't allowed to express their authentic selves. Hollywood operated under a controlling system where studios changed names, histories, appearances, and dictated every aspect of performers' lives through restrictive contracts. Hollywood truly embodied the saying, "Everything that glitters is not gold." While many performers embellished their backgrounds, Dona Drake elevated this practice to extraordinary levels. Her motivation was clear. She wanted a successful Hollywood career that went beyond stereotypical roles, like domestic workers or comedic sidekicks. The truth about Drake's background was dramatically different from her public persona. She wasn't from Mexico and had no Latin heritage, despite mastering Spanish to maintain her carefully constructed identity. In reality, the woman known as Dona Drake was born Eunice Westmoreland on November 15, 1914. Historical sources vary regarding her birthplace. Some indicate Jacksonville, Florida, while others suggest Miami, but most reliable documentation points to Miami. Her parents, Joseph and Novella Westmoreland, were a light-skinned African-American couple. Drake had successfully accomplished one of the most remarkable instances of racial passing since other notable performers of her era. Here's what makes her story even more fascinating. The official census records actually document her transformation in real time. Her family went from being listed as black in 1910 to mulatto in 1920 to Negro in 1930. But by 1950, something remarkable had happened. Dona herself was recorded as white in California, while her father and brother back in Pennsylvania were still listed as Negro. It's like watching her carefully constructed new identity take root in the official records of America. Life proved particularly challenging for the Westmoreland family in Florida, where segregation was strictly enforced and opportunities for black families were severely limited, making the family's later move to Philadelphia a search for better prospects. Such drastic measures were often considered necessary for actors from diverse backgrounds to have any chance at substantial Hollywood careers during those times. The emotional cost for the Westmoreland family, having to pretend their own daughter was a stranger, missing her film premieres, maintaining her secret for her career's sake, represented profound parental love and sacrifice. Early years and musical beginnings. The fascinating story begins with Eunice, called Una, born November 15, 1914, in Miami, Florida. Una was one of 5 children growing up in a household where every penny mattered, and her parents worked hard to provide for all their children. Una showed natural musical ability, and her parents quickly recognized this exceptional talent. They couldn't have predicted how far their daughter's musical abilities would ultimately take her. In 1930, as Una grew into adolescence, the Westmoreland family relocated to Philadelphia. Mr. Westmoreland found employment in a chili parlor, working long hours for modest wages while trying to support 5 children, making life particularly challenging for the family. While one of Una's siblings began college, Una, who had developed into a strikingly beautiful young woman, helped at the restaurant briefly, entertaining guests with her beauty and musical talents. However, her dreams of stardom proved too powerful to ignore. In 1932, Una, her mother, and another restaurant worker named Renee Villon left for Manhattan, leaving behind her father and siblings, a decision that must have been emotionally difficult for a close-knit family already facing financial challenges. Una and Renee formed a singing duo, marking the beginning of Una's concealment of her ethnic roots. Thanks to her curly hair and striking blue-green eyes, she was easily mistaken for either Caucasian or Latin heritage. The duo soon secured a performance opportunity at the Paradise Club on Broadway. Earl Carroll, a prominent theatrical producer known as a rival to Florenz Ziegfeld, discovered Una's talents. Una proved far more than just another chorus girl. She could sing, dance, and master multiple instruments, including clarinet, drums, saxophone, and piano. Following their engagement at Earl Carroll's Vanities, Una and Renee toured together until Renee left to marry. Undeterred, Una continued as a solo performer, eventually opening for popular entertainers like Rudy Vallee and Harry Richman. During this period, Una began a relationship with Louis Pretty Amberg, a Russian-born criminal figure who showered her with attention and extravagant gifts. However, their relationship ended tragically when, in October 1935, Amberg was found deceased in a burning car in Brooklyn under circumstances that shocked the criminal underworld. Meanwhile, Una had moved to Hollywood, now performing under the name Rita Rio. She secured a minor role as a spirited character in the comedy film Strike Me Pink, starring Eddie Cantor and Ethel Merman. When questioned about Amberg by the FBI, she claimed to know him only as Mr. Cohen and denied awareness of his criminal occupation. She remembered him as a polite and respectful gentleman with whom she enjoyed horseback riding through Central Park. Rita Rio and the Rhythm Girls. Rita's initial Hollywood experience failed to create the impact she had hoped for, prompting her return to New York. Rather than surrender to disappointment, Rita orchestrated a publicity spectacle. She adopted a Latin persona full-time and formed an all-girl orchestra called Rita Rio and the Rhythm Girls. The sight was indeed remarkable. A black woman presenting as Latina. The band created considerable excitement and toured successfully across the United States, sharing stages with respected band leaders like Kay Kaiser. Upon returning to Hollywood, they filmed several musical shorts that played in cinemas before main features. One such short featured Rita performing an entertaining song, Feed the Kitty, alongside future star Alan Ladd. As Rita navigated Hollywood's glittering landscape, she underwent several additional name changes. For a brief period, she performed as Rita Novella, honoring her mother's first name, and later as Rita Shaw. During this time, she reconnected with actress Dorothy Lamour, an acquaintance from her New York days. Following Lamour's recommendation, Rita auditioned for a role in Aloma of the South Seas at Paramount Pictures. She delivered an exceptional audition and secured the part, leading to her final name transformation. She became Dona Drake, and this identity would define the rest of her career. This marked the moment when Paramount began promoting her as a Latina actress from Mexico. Whether studio executives were aware of Drake's actual heritage and chose to participate in the deception, or whether Drake had successfully convinced them of her fabricated background, remains a historical mystery. Many entertainment historians believe the studio knew, but found the arrangement beneficial for all parties involved. Regardless of studio knowledge, the film achieved tremendous success, earning Academy Award nominations in cinematography and visual effects. Rise to Hollywood success. Paramount quickly cast Drake in a supporting role in the Bob Hope comedy Louisiana Purchase. Reports suggest Hope was particularly impressed with the young actress and ensured her inclusion in his next film, Road to Morocco, one of the celebrated road movies starring Hope, Bing Crosby, and Dorothy Lamour. In this production, Drake portrayed an Arab princess, further expanding her range of ethnic characterizations. Between film projects, Drake performed in nightclubs and contributed to the war effort by appearing as a pinup favorite in Yank, the Army Weekly magazine, becoming a popular pinup for soldiers serving overseas during World War II, though, ironically, many of the troops who admired her photographs might not have accepted her if they had known her true racial identity. Her next film was the musical extravaganza Star Spangled Rhythm. Though the film's plot lacked substance, it served as a showcase for Paramount Studios' entire roster of contract players to demonstrate their talents in elaborate song and dance numbers. Drake performed The Swing Shift, sharing the spotlight with established actresses Marjorie Reynolds and Betty Jane Rhodes. Paramount's initial enthusiasm for their Mexican Spitfire began to diminish after casting her in several forgettable productions, including the musical Salute for Three and a less memorable Bob Hope vehicle. When the studio loaned her to Monogram, a smaller film company known for budget productions, for the lead role in Hot Rhythm, industry observers recognized that her days at Paramount were numbered. The studio terminated her contract shortly thereafter. Drake expressed disappointment about the experience, stating, "It was wonderful at first with Paramount. I thought I was on my way to becoming a film actress." But here's where Drake showed a side of herself that was remarkably honest and self-aware. In a 1960 interview, she said something that would shock most actors today. "Of course I'm not an actress. You know perfectly well that you don't have to be an actress to go over in pictures. Among girls my age, how many are there on the screen who can act? The secret of screen success is largely a matter of a good part and a good director." Can you imagine any modern star admitting that so bluntly? It shows she understood exactly what Hollywood was, a carefully constructed illusion where talent was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Marriage and new opportunities. While filming Hot Rhythm, her friend and fellow actress Joan Blondell introduced Drake to an emerging costume designer named William Billy Travilla. At the time, Travilla worked at Western Costume, but was destined for greater achievements. He would later win an Oscar for his work on the Errol Flynn adventure film Adventures of Don Juan. He also created iconic garments for Marilyn Monroe, including the famous white pleated halter dress from The 7-Year Itch. Eventually transitioning to television, he would earn Emmy Awards for his designs. Following a brief 10-day courtship, Drake and Travilla married at Santa Monica City Hall on August 19, 1944. Now here's something that shows just how much her life had changed. Drake had actually turned down a lucrative $5,000 per week contract in Las Vegas to marry Travilla. To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to about $75,000 a week today. Travilla himself joked about it, saying, "My wife turned down a $5,000 a week contract in Las Vegas because now she had a husband to support her." But Drake felt that having a stable marriage was worth more than even that kind of money. The timeline of when Travilla discovered Drake's true heritage remains unclear. Interracial marriage was prohibited by law in the United States at the time, so maintaining Drake's secret became even more critical. It wasn't just her career at stake, but their legal standing as a married couple. This situation raised numerous unanswered questions. Were her parents present at the wedding? If so, how were they introduced to guests? Who among their circle knew the truth? The lack of documentation suggests Drake successfully maintained her deception from the press and possibly from some personal acquaintances. Following her departure from Paramount, Drake became a freelance actress. This period proved exciting for her career development. She secured a substantial supporting role alongside John Wayne and Claudette Colbert in the RKO comedy Without Reservations. She starred as Kent Taylor's leading lady in the 20th Century Fox B film Dangerous Millions and portrayed Dan Durier's girlfriend in Another Part of the Forest, a prequel to the classic Lillian Hellman story, The Little Foxes. She also obtained a significant part in MGM's So This Is New York, starring Harry Morgan and Rudy Vallee, where she finally portrayed a non-ethnic character. She later appeared as Betty Davis's Native American housekeeper in Beyond the Forest, and as Eddie Bracken's girlfriend in The Girl from Jones Beach, alongside Ronald Reagan and Virginia Mayo, where she again portrayed a Caucasian character. Personal challenges and family life. While Drake's Hollywood career gained momentum, her personal life remained far from glamorous. She managed a mild form of epilepsy while experiencing significant emotional challenges. Her husband Travilla observed that she was one of those actresses who found it difficult to transition from her film characters back to her private self, an observation that takes on deeper meaning when considering she had been performing a character not just in films, but in every moment of her public life for over a decade. The constant deception required to maintain her ethnic masquerade likely created enormous psychological pressure. Even presenting as a Latin woman in Hollywood proved difficult. Latino performers weren't treated with significantly more respect than black performers in that era, so she continued facing discrimination while maintaining her elaborate disguise. However, amid these challenges, joy arrived. In 1951, Drake welcomed the birth of her daughter, Naya Novella Travilla, on August 16th, though even this joyous occasion carried uncertainty. Would her child's appearance reveal the family secret that Drake had spent so many years protecting? Their Hollywood home was unlike anything you'd expect from a typical family. Thanks to Travilla's constant travels, they had created what could only be described as a private zoo. Picture this. About 100 birds filling 2 aviaries, finches, cockatoos, and fantails chirping away. Add 4 turtles, a succession of ocelots, and even a rhesus monkey wandering around. Drake had a sense of humor about it all, joking, "Wish I'd studied veterinary medicine as a kid. I finally begged him to collect the kind of birds that don't lay eggs, and he got the hint. It was like living in an exotic paradise, but one that required constant care and attention, just like Drake's carefully maintained public persona." After dedicating time to motherhood, Drake returned to film work. She secured a small part in the now classic film Kansas City Confidential, starring John Payne and Colleen Gray. She later brought energy to her role in the adventure film The Bandits of Corsica, featuring Richard Green and Paula Raymond. Finally achieving leading lady status, Drake typically portrayed ethnic characters in B films. She starred opposite Keith Larson in Son of Belle Starr and Rex Allen in Down Laredo Way. Drake also made the transition to television, appearing in The Adventures of Superman in 1953 alongside George Reeves. In 1954, she made her final screen appearance in the 20th Century Fox adventure film Princess of the Nile. Following a few additional TV roles, she retired from the entertainment industry. Later years and declining health. Unfortunately, Drake's emotional challenges continued to intensify, creating strain in her marriage. In 1956, she and Travella decided to separate, though they maintained an unusual arrangement, appearing together at public functions and on Groucho Marx's You Bet Your Life show in 1960, where observers noted Drake seemed uncomfortable and uncertain when discussing her film career. That television appearance on March 24, 1960, tells us so much about what was happening to Drake by then. When Groucho Marx asked her about her films, the very movies that had made her famous, she looked completely lost. She seemed visibly uncomfortable throughout the entire segment, uncertain about her own career. Watching it now, you can see a woman who had been performing for so long that she seemed disconnected from her own achievements. It was heartbreaking, really. Here she was, still elegantly dressed and beautiful, but you could sense something wasn't right. The couple never officially divorced and maintained an amicable relationship for their daughter's benefit. Drake continued to model in Travalla's fashion shows, and they appeared together as a family unit when circumstances required. Despite these efforts, Drake continued to struggle, and the stress of maintaining her decades-long deception, combined with her epilepsy and emotional difficulties, began to overwhelm her. In 1967, Drake made the difficult decision to send her daughter to live with Travilla while she sought help for her epilepsy and mental health challenges, a choice that must have been agonizing for a mother who had already sacrificed so much of her authentic self. Unfortunately, available treatments seemed unable to alleviate her difficulties. By the late 1970s, her health had deteriorated significantly, and she increasingly withdrew from public life, becoming more isolated as the weight of her lifelong secret took its toll. She managed to gather strength for one final public appearance at the 1986 Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade in New York. Tragically, Drake passed away on June 20th, 1989, from pneumonia and respiratory failure just 1 year before her husband Travilla also passed away, ending a complex but enduring relationship that had weathered the extraordinary pressures of her hidden identity. Even in her final act, Drake chose to disappear completely. Unlike so many Hollywood stars who rest in famous cemeteries where fans can visit them, Drake's ashes were scattered at sea. There's something poetic about that choice. A woman who had spent her entire career creating and maintaining an illusion chose to return to the waves, leaving no physical trace behind. Perhaps it was her way of finally letting go of all the personas she'd carried for so many years. Historical reflection and legacy. Examining Drake's life reveals the enormous toll her secret exacted, particularly the heartbreak her parents must have endured, unable to publicly celebrate their daughter's success or attend her premieres as proud parents, forced instead to remain shadows in her life. While progress has been made in Hollywood representation, significant work remains. Drake lived during an era filled with prejudice and discrimination, both in American society and within Hollywood itself. She likely felt she had no viable alternative if she wanted to pursue her dreams. The question remains, at what cost? To deny one's true identity for the chance at a career represents a burden difficult to comprehend. The irony deepens when considering that her daughter Nia would grow up to become a veterinarian, living openly and authentically in a way her mother never could. Though tragically, Nia herself passed away young at age 51 in 2002, having never married or had children, ending the family line. Whether Drake's sacrifices were worthwhile remains unknowable. Many performers experienced similar struggles, leading to the recurring pattern of entertainers who achieved fame only to struggle with substance use and tragic endings. This pattern repeats throughout entertainment history with disturbing frequency. Contemporary access to information finally provides glimpses behind Hollywood's facade. The prevalence of fabrication becomes clear. Authenticity was rare, if not impossible. Travilla noted in interviews that Drake wasn't simply acting in films. Her entire life was a performance, creating a background she didn't possess while also performing in movies. She appeared to disconnect from reality, with her husband stating she would return home and remain in character from her film roles, unable to step out of those personas. Many performers experienced this phenomenon. They developed alternate personalities easily because they were already performing roles constantly as public figures. Marilyn Monroe consistently spoke about Norma Jean as separate from Marilyn, often referring to herself in third person because she viewed herself as playing the character Marilyn for the public. When performers must maintain character beyond film work, during fan interactions, red carpet events, interviews, they remain in persona constantly. Only a few individuals develop the ability to separate from these manufactured identities, and the inability to do so can create confusion, depression, and emotional turmoil. Studios provided these performers with manufactured personalities they were required to maintain, and they couldn't simply reveal the truth, because public backlash would be swift and unforgiving. The psychological weight of living such an elaborate deception seems almost incomprehensible. Drake likely viewed this transformation as the better alternative compared to facing the harsh treatment Black performers endured in that era. The question of what any individual might have done in similar circumstances during that historical period remains complex and deeply personal. Drake's story serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of systemic discrimination and the extraordinary lengths talented individuals went to pursue their dreams in an unforgiving industry. Her legacy deserves to be remembered not just for the deception she felt compelled to maintain, but for the remarkable talent and determination that drove her to such desperate measures. Today, film historians are still working to preserve pieces of her story. The UCLA Film and Television Archive has carefully restored her film, Sweet Shoe, from old 16mm prints, ensuring that future generations can witness her performances. It's a small but important effort to keep alive the work of someone who, despite all the barriers she faced, managed to leave her mark on Hollywood history. These preserved films are now some of the only authentic records we have of a woman who spent her entire career pretending to be someone else. What other Hollywood legends were hiding secrets that would shock us today? The Golden Age was full of mysteries, and we're just getting started uncovering them. Subscribe now and become part of our community that celebrates the complexity, talent, and humanity of classic Hollywood's biggest stars. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we discover next.